Dad, the car lease is dead. It has gone the way of the dinosaurs' extinction. For the car lease, it is pretty fascinating to see, Dad. Leasing a car is probably we're like 2 or 3, maybe 5 years away from that just being a thing of the past. Do you think I'm being hyperbolic here, or is that the truth?
Well, I think you're being somewhat hyperbolic because I think big vehicles, trucks and things of that nature will always continue to be leased because those companies understand that you lease things that depreciate and you try to acquire things that appreciate. And there ain't any big rigs out there that are, well, appreciating.
Okay. But like retail customers that we've seen... Yeah.
Automobile leasing for customers, for the regular consumers out there, that does seem to be going the way of the dinosaur. I think it was 2 years ago or 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, leasing accounted for about 34% of all vehicle sales, okay? And that number today is probably hovering around 16%. Now, there's any number of reasons for that, but the biggest reason in my mind is that the manufacturers have decided to no longer support leasing. They're not incentivizing the leases to try and keep payments down to make the more expensive cars more affordable on a monthly basis for a larger number of people. And that to me is counterintuitive. I know a lot of the manufacturers, well, they don't like leasing. Well, I don't know why not. Leases force people to get back into the market every 2 to 3 years. Typical leases are 36 months. A typical purchase today with a finance is 70 months. Well, wouldn't you really rather get the people back in the market every 3 years as opposed to every 6 years?
And Dad, that's one of the reasons why we've also seen leasing decline. Think about all those people who had leased in 2018, 2019. They went back to turn in that lease, and we educated them and others and said, no. Do not return that lease and just get into another lease car. Just buy it out. So the lack of vehicle supply, although beneficial for the automakers and the dealers because profits went up, actually was pretty a disadvantage to getting more people into lease vehicles, which for a long time was the way to sell more inventory as an OEM, was just get people to transition in and out.
Yeah, but you have to look at the past 2 years as an aberration, okay? The history prior to that was that leasing made sense. You got people back into the market every 3 years. The residual values that were set for the cars were always higher than what the market values were, so that the intelligent consumer wouldn't buy out their lease at the end. And it just so happens in the last 2 years that people's residual values are much lower than the market values. That's not going to continue forever, and it probably won't continue for another 2 or 3 years, because if the manufacturers adjust their residual values to make them higher again, guess what's going to happen 3 years from now? The market will have adjusted. The market value of those cars will be below what the residual values are. The people won't want to buy them. They'll want to turn them back into the dealerships, so they'll have nice, low mileage, young, used cars for their lots. It just seems to me, from having spent 43 years in retail automotive, that as a manufacturer, that's what you want to encourage your customers to do. You want to encourage them to get out sooner rather than later.
Well, Dad,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the biggest selling points of a lease is the fact that you're getting, of course, all the new tech and a brand new vehicle, sure, but you could get that if you bought the car. Typically, the payment was going to be lower. So for most people that were payment shoppers, and what we've seen during the pandemic or post-pandemic now, Dad, lease payments could be comparable, if not higher, than just financing the thing outright. And that goes back to your point. Manufacturers just haven't supported it. Why haven't manufacturers supported it? I guess they just want people buying them, or I guess maybe it's not as lucrative for them to support it from their captive financing arm. I mean, we can't see into their books, but obviously, if the lease payment's going to be the same as financing, it doesn't make sense to lease it. Thinking about getting auto insurance? Compare quotes from all the major carriers in one place. Join YAA.com/insurance. It's quick, easy, and no spam.
Well, the one thing that the manufacturers have done is they figured out that they don't have to spend as much money in incentives. And if they wanted people to continue leasing, they would have to increase their incentive spend, at least on the lease side of things. But to me, that's just to say, well, we want to keep our incentive spend down. That's really short-term blindness on their part. Yes, the lease payment is now equal to a purchase payment, so why would anybody lease the car? But your customer is forced to stay in the car for a longer period of time. So even if you have to continue to incentivize the lease, you're guaranteeing yourself another shot at those people to sell them another car in 3 years, as opposed to 6 or 7 or 8 years. It just seems to me that it would be cheaper to incentivize that. If you only incentivize one thing for people right now as a manufacturer, to me it would be leasing, so that you can get them in the market again.
I hear you, Pops, but the trend is undeniable. The percentage of consumers who are leasing rather than financing or paying cash outright has plummeted, and probably will continue to plummet because the OEMs are not supporting it. So if you're out there and you're thinking, hey, you know what, I'm going to lease that new Honda Passport. You probably don't. You actually probably don't. Just finance the damn thing. And obviously, this is a good point for why we have the community forum. Get your car deal reviewed by our team at YAA. But still, Dad, I think leasing's going the way of the dinosaur. I think you'll see more of those subscription things continue to pop up, but it seems like leasing, at least for the consumer, on the retail side, it's on its way out, man.
Apparently, you're going to be able to walk into your local car dealer and say, hey, I'd like to get a pterodactyl. Because you just won't be able to lease a car moving forward.